Good afternoon, class. I am starting just a couple minutes early. Surprise! Just because, let's get going. Our difficulty with the last class and getting it to, sorry, I ate, run correctly, and I'm, you know, ready to get started with this now that I have it all running correctly. Chapter 4, The Teacher Teaches. We are reading Who Was Booker T. Washington? And we know that he was a slave, but just for a very short time. And then he was able to go to school. Forced to work in the fields of large farms called plantations without pay. But then the slaves were free, so he was able to go to school. With the decree from Hampton, it was time for Booker to put his education to work, and he was lucky enough to do that in a familiar place. In the summer of 1875, he turned to the town of Malden to run the Tinkersville neighborhood school. One of his students was his own brother, John. One of his students was his own brother, John. Booker would later help pay for John to attend Hampton, too. Booker did all he could to educate his students in Malden, and so do I. And so do I. There's John Washington. So, must be Booker's brother. And there's another illustration. He added a night school so that students who worked during the day could still come to class. He taught Sunday school for his church, including one session at the salt factory where he used to work. He created a library for black residents, and he always had newspapers and magazines available to everyone to read. He wanted to spread the lesson he had learned at Hampton about education and self-improvement to anyone who was willing to learn. And, when you think about it, who has an appreciation for their education? Do you have an appreciation for your education, right? He also made sure his Tinkerville students stayed as neat as he had been at Hampton. I require all my students to keep their clothes neat and clean and their hair combed every morning, and the boys to keep their boots clean, he wrote to a friend at Hampton. It's important to take that kind of pride, because remember what he said. I have watched carefully the influence of the toothbrush, and I am convinced that there are few things in civilization that are more far-reaching. I've talked about it all day in class today. Now, not the entire class, but I brought it up in every class today, I think, pretty much. Maybe not the last one, because I was frustrated with the technology. Thanks. Booker believed so much in the importance of being able to express his ideas that he started a debating club in Malden. He invited the community to come and discuss popular and important issues. Malden challenged nearby towns to debating contests, which Booker often helped them win. He also worked as a clerk for the local African Zion Baptist Church. That's a lot of work, huh? In 1878, Booker decided to attend the Wayland Seminary School in Washington, D.C. The Wayland School trained ministers and preachers. Booker was a Christian who had always had very strong faith, but he did not stay long. Booker missed the hard work and the routine he had at Hampton and in Malden. He worried that the way that the future ministers were being taught would not work in the real world. They knew more about Latin and Greek when they left school, but they seemed to know less about life and its conditions as they would meet it at their homes. Booker believed that he had learned at Hampton. Booker believed what he had learned at Hampton. The black people needed to learn lessons that would help them succeed in their daily life. While he was in Washington, Booker did get to hear the famous African American leader Frederick Douglass speak. Frederick Douglass. Although Frederick Douglass was born a slave, he still managed to learn to read. In 1838, he escaped slavery in Maryland and moved north to Massachusetts and later New York. He continues his education and began to speak out about life as a slave. His skill at writing and giving speeches amazed the many people who came to hear him speak. He published a popular autobiography in 1845. Some whites believed that a black person could not have written such a great book. Frederick Douglass became the most important African American in the country in the decades before the Civil War. He spoke out against slavery, and he was in favor of women's rights. He believed in the equality of all people. During the war, Douglass advised President Abraham Lincoln about the issue of slavery. Following the war, Douglass was one of the first black people to hold office in the U.S. government. He was appointed Consul General to the Dominican Republic and to Haiti in 1889. And remember, that's where the Spaniards first landed. That's where Christopher Columbus first landed, in fact. In 1879, General Armstrong asked Booker to speak at the Hampton graduation. Booker gave a speech he called The Force That Wins. It summed up all beliefs he had on the importance of going to school and making the right choices. He told the graduates that the force that wins called for more than books. Students needed to have wisdom and common sense, a heart set on the right and a trust in God. I absolutely believe that. Absolutely. General Armstrong was very impressed with the speech. He asked Booker to return to Hampton, this time as a teacher. He put Booker in charge of a group of poor students who had to take night classes after working all day to earn their school fees. Booker did his job so well that these students soon joined the regular students. This group was known as the plucky class for their spirit and hard work. It became a badge of honor to be made part of this group of students who worked so hard at both their studies and their jobs. And we look down on those people, don't we? We absolutely do. People who cannot go to school full time, we look down on those people, but they are good at both their jobs and their education. Booker taught public speaking, English geography, and personal health care at the Hampton Institute for 2 years, and then with a recommendation from General Armstrong, he began an entirely new chapter in his life. I hope I am too. Chapter 5, Mr. Washington's New Job. In 1881, the state of Alabama created a new school to educate black people to become teachers. It was called Tuskegee Normal School. The Tuskegee Normal School. Well, no wonder they targeted Tuskegee in the experiment, right? Because there they were, a new school to educate all black people to become teachers. And then they gave them syphilis? I am astounded. I'm astounded. The organizers of the school wrote to General Armstrong to see if he could recommend a white teacher to lead the school. Instead, Armstrong suggested Booker. The Hampton Institute leader called his former student clear-headed, modest, sensible, polite, and a thorough teacher and superior man, the best man we ever had here. And so the state of Alabama chose Booker. Booker would be missed at Hampton. His plucky class students gave him a watch chain to say thank you for all he had done for them. You know what I got? Nothing. I'm getting, like, put in the poorhouse. That's what I'm getting for all my years of teaching. After stopping to see his family in Malden, Booker headed to Tuskegee, a city in central Alabama about 180 miles north of the Gulf of Mexico. When Booker arrived at his new school in June 1881, all he found was an empty lot. There was no money to start setting up the school, but no buildings. There was money to start setting up the school, but no buildings, no students, and no teachers. Booker would have to do it all. Thanks for inviting me. He found a local church and lent him a spare room to teach in. He advised in the local paper to find students. He advertised in the local paper to find students. And he hired a teacher to help him. On July 4th, Booker welcomed the first 30 students to Tuskegee Normal School. And then they made them abnormal, didn't they? Oh my gosh, I'm sickened. And it was on July 4th too. And on July 4th. Oh my gosh. It was not exactly a perfect beginning. Booker later wrote that the roof leaked so much that a student held an umbrella over him as he read to the class. See the student? There's Booker. Even though he had already started teaching classes, Booker had also had to begin the hard work of building the school itself. He spoke often to the groups of local white businessmen to raise money. He believed that they would support a school that would help black people learn new skills. By educating workers who could then earn more money, Booker was creating customers for their stores. Booker also, educate people and they'll be customers, dingbats. Jeez. color of my bedroom as a bookmark. Others at Hampton sent classroom materials like maps, books. I'm sorry. Booker also got a loan from General J.F.B. Marshall, one of General Armstrong's assistants at Hampton. Others at Hampton sent classroom materials like maps, books, and globes. Soon Booker had enough money to buy 100 acres of farmland just outside the town. I think that's what we're doing here in this neighborhood. I think as I asked to start a university, and I think it might be right here for all the people who really need it. So support me, because that's what I'm doing. I am trying to start a university for all the vulnerable people that really need it, and a university that studies God as well as nature, nurture, and all those other things. That's what we're looking for, not these asshole universities that have one tunnel vision their own. Oh, shoot. I hate that. I got it. Booker taught classes in the hen house and in the stable. He used the farm's fields to grow sweet potatoes and other vegetables to feed students and to help pay for more school supplies. That's exactly what I want to do. I want to be a Booker T. Washington. By November, the school had more than 80 students, and Booker hired more teachers to help him. One was Olivia Davidson. She soon became his top assistant and the lady principal in charge of female students at Tuskegee. She also came up with many ideas to raise money for the school from local black families and also from white Northerners. By the summer of 1882, the school had paid off its loans, and Booker had become a respected person in the community. He started what became regular trips to the northern states to try to raise money for Tuskegee. He visited white families who believed that educating black people was the right thing to do. They felt that former slaves and their family deserved a chance at a better life. So there's a lot of people who believed it, and yet when you read history, it's like what was the big argument about? The argument was about all those people in power. They're the ones who were arguing to keep the slaves in the North and the South and in the West and in the East. Booker's experience of working with white people like Mrs. Ruffner and General Armstrong helped him have great success on these tours. And I need black people and American Indians to be helping me on this, as well as Mexicans and Jews. Also that summer, he married Fannie Norton Smith. Fannie had been a former student of his at the Tinkersville School who had gone on to study at Hampton. They were married in Malden's African Zion Baptist Church and then returned together to Tuskegee. In the years that followed, the number of students at Alabama School grew too large for the small farm buildings. In order to expand, Booker would need the students' help. He hired experts to teach his students how to create every part of a new building. For their new chapel, Booker's students cut the wood at the school's sawmill and formed bricks by hand. He hired his brother John as one of the leaders of the sawmill operation. Other students worked with architecture teachers to design the buildings. Still others made the furniture for classrooms. By doing this, the students not only created a new place to study, but they also learned valuable skills for the future. In 1883, Booker and Fannie had a daughter named Portia. Sadly, Fannie died the very next year after falling from a wagon. Olivia Davidson became Booker's second wife in 1885 while continuing her work as lady principal at Tuskegee. They had two sons, Baker and Ernest. When he grew up, Baker changed his name to Booker Jr. after his father, but tragedy struck again in 1889, just 2 days after Ernest was born. The smoke from a house fire damaged Olivia's lungs, and she died shortly after. Even during these sad times, Booker continued to lead Tuskegee upward and outward. I'm pretty sure these are all on purpose. Just doesn't happen like that. And there were definitely people who were evil that wanted to stop these people. Even during these sad times, Booker continued to lead Tuskegee upward and outward. By the late 1880s, Booker was teaching less and fundraising more. He only spoke to students during weekly chapel meetings. In 1892, he married for a third time Margaret Murray and had come to the school to replace who had come to the school to replace Olivia as lady principal, and she and Booker had quickly bonded. As Booker continued to build Tuskegee, he was training his students to be teachers who have the proper training of head, hand, and heart. He wanted his students to lift themselves up from the years of slavery their parents and grandparents had endured. Okay, all right. So we're getting, let's see what we have here. Somebody's at the door, so I have to get the door, so I'm going to call it a day. Thanks for being here with me. I'm the teacher, and this is the classroom, and we were here in the reading room. I will see you on Tuesday next week. Thanks.